Alright, so with that, this week. So, anybody watch that first video and think, hot Kool-Aid actually doesn't sound too bad? I mean, I'd probably use grape. I'd much prefer purple Kool-Aid to red Kool-Aid if you're going to do hot Kool-Aid, because I'm not a crazy savage. But purple hot Kool-Aid doesn't actually sound too bad. Be honest, right? You try purple Kool-Aid, hot Kool-Aid, just hot Kool-Aid. That's not what I'm drinking, but maybe I am. And the question is hot Kool-Aid the same as coffee? If somebody made it for you and called it coffee, is hot Kool-Aid the same as coffee? And the answer is no. Kind of because we have a definition of what makes coffee coffee, right? I know. It's throwbacks, I do. So, we have a definition, and I know there's coffee purists out there that will say the only way to drink coffee is black, a pour over where you ground it. It needs to taste like dirt and the ash of a dozen burned Uruk-hai soldiers that Gimli has slain with his axe. Delicious coffee, right? I know there's purists that say that, but no. Coffee simply comes from the coffee bean, right? We have differing understandings of what makes coffee coffee. But at the heart of those differing understandings, coffee is still coffee. We still have a definition for what is coffee. So you could be like me and drink your coffee black and strong. That's how I like it. I like my coffee like I like my markets. Black and strong. This is dumb. This is a dumb joke. Anyway, you could be like that, or you could be like, I can't start my morning without a morning milkshake, okay? I love it with extra caramel, okay? Sauce, not syrup. Extra caramel sauce, blended, extra whipped cream with extra caramel sauce on top. Then I go over to the little stand and I add more sweet and low in it. And the reason why I add sweet and low and not sugar is because sugar's not as sweet as the sweet and low. So, still, even though, thank you, even though that's not black coffee, there's still an element that's considered coffee in there because it stems from the coffee bean, right? It doesn't matter if it's a frozen coffee milkshake or if it's just black coffee, anything in between. We know that a vanilla bean frappuccino is not coffee. That's just a vanilla milkshake. But we know that an espresso still has a coffee bean to it. So there's some sort of element of coffee to these things. Anybody work at a coffee shop, right? And your eye twitch when somebody comes in and they order a caramel macchiato and you make them a legitimate macchiato. Or they just ask for a macchiato and you're like, oh, and then you do the like, well, we don't really use the Starbucks, okay? A macchiato just technically in Italian means marked with. So it's coffee that is marked with. Right? No. But the truth is, there is still a variance. There's still a variance from store to store. But that does not mean that there is, in fact, no such thing as coffee. And I think that's where we have to pivot to the difference between relativism and objectivism and absolutism. Because from a purely relativist standpoint, before we even get into ethics, relativism will say that there is essentially no real way to define coffee. If you want to define coffee as it comes from a green container and looks like radioactive piss and is fizzy and has the words Mountain Dew on it, you can call that coffee if you want. I can't tell you what is and isn't coffee. That effectively is a relativist standpoint because there is no correlation. It's not connecting to anything specifically. That is what we're talking about when we talk relativism. That whatever it is we're talking about has no direct correlation to the real world. And yet, coffee does. It may be different. If anybody's worked in a coffee shop or been to a coffee shop, there's drip coffee. We know how drip coffee is. You have it, you grind it, there's certain beans, you put it in, whatever, right? Like, and you get a whole pot of drip coffee. It's different than, say, an espresso shot, which stems from a different bean, different process, grinding, you tamp it, you pull a shot, there's a crema on top, right? So you have that. Different than, say, an Americano, which is coffee, or which is specifically a shot of espresso in hot water. And the name, and this is kind of interesting and we'll relate, if you don't know where the name comes from, the name stems from Italy. During World War I or World War II, American soldiers went in. They only had enough rations generally for a period of time. So here they come into these towns and they've got cafes. But these Italians are not drinking a mug of coffee. They're drinking little things of espresso and sipping them. And Americans were like, we're American. We take everything bigger. And so they sip coffee and they taste it and they're like, whoa, this is way too strong and way too little. Can you add some hot water to it? And the Italians thought that was hilarious and called it an Americano because only Americans need to water down the espresso to get it like something else. To get it like the coffee they drink at home. So, fun name, fun fact, boom. But does that mean who's correct when we're talking definition of what is accurately coffee? See, we know that hot Kool-Aid isn't coffee. Hot Kool-Aid is just hot Kool-Aid. Coffee is coffee. And there's different processes, but it still connects to something in reality. It still corresponds with an actual thing in reality. What about a game? How is a game something else? You all had quite varying definitions of game. Everything from something you play that's fun to something that you watch to what were some of the other ones? Something you watch, something you play. You've got entertainment. You've got group competition. You've got it has to have rules. It could be board games, playground games. I don't know. Did any of you call hunting? Use what's defined as game? Did any of you say hunting? You hunt game? And I know that's sort of similar to some of you mentioned dating and being like love games, but I don't know if we can honestly call someone game. If you're like, I'm out for game tonight, right? Maybe you do. But what we're looking at effectively with relativism is no correlation to that. And how that plays into things is effectively, okay, so if we all had the same container, and we'll pivot back to game, I promise. If we all had the same container, closed, I was not allowed to look in your container, you weren't allowed to look in mine, we weren't allowed to compare containers, we weren't allowed to compare what's in containers, etc., etc. The relativist would say that's effectively how things are. So, we all just kind of call coffee coffee, and if I take a sip, yep, that's coffee. if you're not allowed to look in mine, if we don't have something outside each of us that we can correlate our definitions to, and in fact corroborate more than just correlate our definitions to, and say, this in fact lines up with coffee. You may have cream in yours, you may have skim milk in yours, you may have sugar in yours, whatever the case may be, yours may be as black as the markets should be. If we don't have something outside of it, then we have no basis to corroborate what in fact coffee is. So I cannot tell you, when you take a drink from your receptacle that looks exactly like mine and say, good coffee, I can't say you're not drinking coffee, because I don't know. We can't argue. There's a certain set of linguistics and connection that we do not overlap with. We cannot connect with. We cannot discuss, because we do not have something outside of us to corroborate that to or correlate that to. So when we talk relativism, the most that we can discuss from a relativist standpoint is a very individual, personal honesty. I can't say that you are or aren't drinking coffee. I can't say that I am or am not drinking coffee. I can simply say, I call this coffee. And I could lie about it or not. So am I being honest with myself or aren't I? Point one. Point two, I can only be honest about my statements made about my cup. So coffee is irrelevant in this subject. Coffee is irrelevant in this regard. I take a drink, I say, that's good coffee, I love it. And then I say, see you all, and I log off and in the stream, and then I cry myself on those pillows and pull up that TARDIS blanket and go, I don't know why I keep lying. I hate that drink. It's horrible. And I just keep drinking it and telling people I love it. Why? It's not true, or it is true to me. That's the only interaction we can have with these things. That's the only way that we can engage with something that is relative. So, when we talk specifically about ethics, and we're talking about something relative and subjective, right? And those two kind of get used interchangeably. I will probably stick with relativism, but what you will see is subjective ethical relativism and then conventional ethical relativism. There's two names, and we'll get into that breakdown. Essentially, one is personal and the other is communal, or collective. You can call the conventional ethical relativism interchangeably with collective ethical relativism. And subjective ethical relativism, you can effectively just call personal relativism. Effectively, though, when relativism is applied to ethics, what that is saying is, just like there is no correlation, there is no corroboration to anything external. I cannot connect my definition of what I'm drinking to an external factor. If I say this is coffee, there's nothing else externalized. It's simply my opinion. It's simply my thoughts. There's no such thing as coffee. Coffee is just this made-up thing that we can apply to whatever we want to. So, that's the relativist perspective. There is no such thing as coffee. It's just whatever we come up with to label it as, right? That's the relativist. So when it comes to ethics, when it comes to morality, Relativism is something that simply says the same rule applies to ethical shoulds. There is no external ethical thing that your right or wrong action correlates to. There's nothing outside that connects to your judging whatever it is that you're judging, your ethical decisions. There's no external factor. So effectively, for the relativist, all ethics are opinion based. So yes, cereal is soup, probably not a soap. I mean, if you're washing with cereal, you probably smell really delightful, if it's Lucky Charms at least. But I think, yeah, what you're talking about is soup. But that brings up a good point. Who here likes cupcakes? Anybody? No. No, good. Because cupcakes are horrible, and they're disgusting traps that just have frosting, and there's no real way to eat them. And if any of you really enjoy cupcakes as opposed to real cake or pie, then you're all going to hell. You're sinners, you're going to hell, and even Jesus on the cross can't save you. Who here likes lemonade? Same thing. If you like it, you're going to hell. Okay? Especially if you mix it in your iced tea. All right? There's no mixing of the two. Wow, that's quite a start to that afternoon special. For access to the full video, or to get the full course, or just support me making new content that has everything or nothing to do with what you just watched, head on over to my Patreon, link in the bio. Join the community. I'd love to see you there and have you become a part of something bigger than me, but something where I can play my part just the same. See you there.